Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy Friday, everybody. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It's a great day to be great. It's a great day to break down some Thursday night happenings as well as all of the fantasy relevant injuries that you need to know ahead of week 4. So joining me as he does every single Friday right here, it is a happy Cowboys fan, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland. Dwain, great day to be great, my friend.
Great day to be great. Went and hung out with the buddies last night. Hartitz, we got the Cowboys victory. At one point, I had to turn the hat backwards. We got a touchdown immediately, long past the CD Lamb, because that's the way it works. Unfortunately, Devin Singletary, finally upgrade the guy in the rankings, Ian. We're like, look, he's getting all the work. Cowboys giving up the most rushing yards in all of the NFL. And the Giants are like, no, we're going to throw the ball. Like all the time. Now, I will say the Cowboys were inviting them to throw the football, but I'm sorry. I don't even care if the Cowboys have a loaded box. I'm just going to try to run it right at them and see what happens because, it's been pretty good for everyone else. So that was a slight disappointment. But hey, Malik Neighbors still did his thing. So it was great, Ian. You get to be a happy Cowboys fan. You get the win. Malik Neighbors doesn't go off in a way that wins the game for the Giants, but he's still okay in the fantasy box score. Dude had another huge game, over 10 catches. Good grief. Had 11 receptions.
Let's get right into all the Thursday night goodness with that. Cowboys, again, did take down the New York Football Giants 20-15, something like their 14th straight win. They've won 12, maybe 12 or 14. Absolutely bonkers, again, dominance recently by the Cowboys there. So Giants did cover, good teams win, great teams cover, Dwain, so can't give the Cowboys the full benefit of the doubt with that 5.5 point spread. The under did cash at, 45 points. So again, smooth performance from Dak Prescott, only let 5 balls hit the ground all night, 221 yards and a pair of touchdowns. Got CD Lamb going, 7 catches for 98 yards and a score. Jake Ferguson as well, 7 catches for 49 yards, which might as well be 200 yards the way the tight end position has been rolling this year. Also, nice game from Rico Dowdle, 46 rushing yards and took a screen, 15 yards to the house. Daniel Jones largely played okay, had to deal with 4 drops out there, 281 yards. His only interception was a heave with only 5 seconds left, so can't really blame him on that. Dwayne mentioned the rough Devin Singletary performance, just 38 yards on 15 touches. Giants as a team only had 26 rushing yards on 24 carries. Next week, Dwayne, that's when we get every single player take right on every single team at every single position in the NFL. I can feel it. And then, as you mentioned, Malik Neighbors, 12 catches, 115 yards on 15 targets. Wan'Dale Robinson, 11 catches for 71 yards as well. Wan'Dale now on pace, guys, to catch 111 passes this season. Lo and behold, Daniel Jones maybe enabling 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers. Absolutely crazy stuff there. But again, Dwayne, let's talk about the star, the guy that regularly went 101 in fantasy drafts all summer long, and that is Cowboys wide receiver 1 CD Lamb. Almost seemed like he was going to go off for an even bigger game because the heavy majority of his production came in the first half, but as it stood, Dwayne, again, season high, 98 yards, and found this end zone for the second time this season. So what did you see from CD, and are you still confident in him being the wide receiver 1 the rest of the way?
I mean, he's a top 3. Like, look, these things with Sam Darnold playing as well as he is, like, it's hard to say Justin Jefferson won't be the wide receiver 1, right? But CD's going to be right there challenging him. And then Malik Neighbors is going to be right there in the conversation. We haven't even talked about Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, the good news is, guys, we have a lot of really talented wide receivers in good situations. CD Lamb is still one of those. He had a 31% target share last night, but it's not surprising. We knew this would eventually happen. We've seen some of these guys, Ian, that are the holdouts/hold-ins. They got off to a little bit of a slow start this year. Saw it with Brandon Ayuk, saw it with Jamar Chase until the blow-up game last week against the Commanders. So something to kind of remember as we move forward. This was kind of a unique storm where we have all these really talented wide receivers entering this period where they would all happen to be holding in or holding out, around the same time. Obviously, Jamar Chase trying to get it in a year early, so we might have to go through this again with Jamar Chase. We'll see how it goes. I will say this. I think there's a couple of really big takeaways overarching because we've got 4 weeks of data, right? And this is when the utilization score gets really strong, as far as its predictive power for future fantasy points. You've done some research on what this means for fantasy points alone and how much that forecasts how you look for the rest of the season. And with the Cowboys, I just say, look, I'm just done with the run game. Like, Rico Dowdle is slightly leading this thing, and I know he squeaked out a score last weekend, but this is an absolute it's a complete committee. We've got Dowdle, we've got Elliott, we've got Lipke, we've got Vaughn. They're all getting playing time, and we haven't seen Dalvin Cook yet. Could one eventually emerge? Yeah. But I haven't seen enough from any of them, Ian, to feel like, oh, God, if they are the guy, like, what are we getting? So I don't think you have to let them clog your roster. You end up being wrong on it. You end up being wrong on it. I'm just not going to worry about it anymore. And then the other one is the guy you already brought up, and it's Wan'Dale Robinson, man. Don't look now, Ian. What do you think Wan'Dale Robinson's target share is right now for the season?
25%?
Dude, 28%. This is a highly condensed off. Malik Neighbors is at 39%, which is just absolutely bonkers.
That's got to be like Dwain. I'll try to check this later, but like I'm guessing that is the highest, team wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 combined out there.
Yeah, there's no one off the top of my head that I would think has more. Yeah, so it's highly condensed between these two. They don't really throw to the tight ends. They're not throwing to the backs. You look at and whenever you look at the roster, you're like, well, they don't really have a tight end that's probably gonna like Theo Johnson. Like, fine, it's nice he's getting playing time, as a rookie. But he's not really getting many targets. So I think this probably continues. And in PPR leagues, Wan'Dale Robinson looking like a wide receiver 3 at least. Standard leagues, not so much. PPR, half PPR. I think Wan'Dale Robinson is a guy, especially with the bye weeks coming up, Ian. He should probably be on rosters, especially in like 12-team leagues.
I remember last year, the only 3 offenses that were over 50% team target share divided between 2 wide receivers were the Raiders, the Eagles, and also the Dolphins. So adding again Wan'Dale and Malik Neighbors to that seems like kind of that messed up dragon in the meme compared to the, really badass ones, with all due respect to Neighbors, obviously. But hey, man, they're getting it done, and just crazy to see Daniel Jones going out there and making it work well enough. So yeah, had the dud in week 1 against the Vikings. We get it. But as the sample size grows, Dwain, looks like everyone's having, trouble with Brian Flores' defense these days. So
one other question for you, Ian, on this one. Is it just time to move on from the Cowboys defense? This is the Mike Zimmer defense. You now got to face off against the Giants, and you weren't able to do anything. Now, Micah Parsons got dinged up, but that was at the end of the game. Parsons actually got dinged up a couple of times. You saw, Lawrence got knocked out of the game as well, like at halftime. I don't think we saw him back after that. So it's, I don't know. I don't know that you really have to, think this is a defense that you're starting much more. Like I saw them starting to get dropped, like in some of the leagues that you and I play in together. So that would be my last question on this. Is there a takeaway there where we're just moving on from the Dallas D?
It is looking like that Parsons suffered a high ankle sprain. They have the Steelers next week, but the way Fields is playing, man, it's not as much of a smash spot as we anticipated. And then after that, it's the Detroit Lions, then a bye week. So honestly, man, if you wanted to keep them for one more week, I get it. But if not, man, I certainly don't think they're a team that needs to be, just rostered at this point. I mean, we had Andrew Booth getting toasted out there, all night. Neighbors put him freaking into the dirt early on with that double move. Trayvon Diggs is fine, but man, like the cornerback depth isn't really there at this point. And again, 2 of the 4 weeks haven't been looking good at all. And even the 2 what should have been smash games against Cleveland and now the Giants, again, not exactly looking like the joke.
The only hope we have is maybe getting Bland back, Deron Bland, because he got hurt in the preseason. And he was one of the guys causing a lot of the turnovers last year. But we know how tricky picks can be. So anyway, I think it's just, they're not a must roster is what I would say.
All right, guys. So again, that was your Thursday night football recap. And with that, Dwain, let's get into the biggest injuries of the week, kicking things off with the quarterback position, where it does seem like Packers QB1 Jordan Love has a chance to return. He has practiced in a limited fashion in both practices to start the week. Now, as we've seen with Matt LaFleur, I don't think we're going to get a clear answer before they actually have to give it to us on Sunday morning. But Dwain, if we do see Love able to start this Sunday against the Vikings, how confident are you in starting him? Or is this more of a, hey, we can get back to playing these wide receivers again?
Well, it's definitely we can get back to playing these wide receivers. It is an interesting question, though, around Jordan Love, because we have a potential opportunity for a shootout here with the Vikings. This should be a really good game. And when you look at what the Vikings have done, they've surrendered quite a bit of yards to the opposing passers, 271 per game. Now, they've faced really good passers. They've faced some really good offenses. So I actually think their secondary is better than that. Minnesota, low-key, looking like the Cowboys defense of last year, the team that creates the turnovers, gets all the sacks, may give up some points, but they're going to be a team that can generate fantasy points. So it's a really interesting matchup. And whenever we look at Jordan Love, like you mentioned, he's got the weapons all around him. So I was just thinking about this before the show. If I really thought Jordan Love was 100% healthy, which I think he would be close to that, Ian, because Malik Willis has played good enough that why would they force it? Why would they force Jordan Love back in when they've just seen that they can win these other 2 games with Malik Willis at quarterback? So right now I've got Jordan Love at QB 19, but if we feel really good about him, I think I could get him as high as right around where I've got Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff. I've got them at QB 14, 15. I've got Anthony Richardson right there in that tier, which, Jesus, I just need to move Anthony Richardson below those two guys.
Just
be done with him for this week.
Goff's been horrible. Richardson's outscored Goff this year.
Well, no, I get it. But still, we know the game environment for Jared Goff, the passing yards have been there. It just hasn't been the touchdowns. They've been running the ball in. So we're eventually going to get the game from Jared. Yeah, but Seattle, like, they've played no one. Yeah. So I don't really believe like that what their defense has done so far. It may prove itself, but they haven't faced anything like the Lions. But to your point, maybe no Laporta. But anyway, in that range, that's the tier that I think you probably get Jordan Love into, is right there with Goff and Mayfield and Geno Smith. So it's not like a must start, Ian. If we knew though, like 1,000% he was healthy, obviously he moves into that QB1 territory.
Can't say enough good things about the job Malik Willis has done in Love's absence. 9.5 yards per attempt, Dwain. That is first among all quarterbacks. And the dude's second in the NFL in yards per carry, also conveniently at 9.5, only behind Kyler Murray. So again, Vikings have been tough. Fifth lowest EPA allowed per dropback. Third lowest EPA allowed per play overall. Should be a very fun NFC North matchup there in Lambeau. And yeah, we even got an Aaron Jones revenge game going on. Get your popcorn ready for that one. Only other kind of quarterback injuries to mention, guys, Brock Purdy again popped up with that back issue, but he's been practicing in full all week, full expecting him to be starting and good to go for this Sunday. Also, we have Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert with the ankle injury, has been practicing in a limited fashion, and is just such a tough guy. I would be surprised at this point if he is not out there and starting. He will have a week 5 bye to hopefully heal up after this game against the Chiefs. And finally, Steelers quarterback Russell Wilson continuing to practice in a limited fashion, but based on what we heard from Mike Tomlin earlier in the week, it does seem like it's once again going to be the Justin Fields experience, this time in a great matchup traveling to Lucas Oil Stadium to take on the Indianapolis Colts. So that is the quarterback injury report. And now, guys, before we move on to running backs, let's get a quick word to our friends over at New Era. I freaking love New Era. Great hats, great company, great vibes. And you can join the fight against cancer with the New Era cap, the official cap of the NFL. Each cap from the Crucial Catch collection not only represents your favorite team in bold colors, but also promotes the prevention and early detection of cancer. I think that's something we can all get behind. Wear your colors proudly and help us tackle cancer head on with the official cap of Crucial Catch. Charitable contributions are awarded by the NFL Foundation to the American Cancer Society, only at New Era. Join the fight today. You're lucky you don't have to put the hat on, Dwain. You know, that beautiful hair of yours wouldn't be looking so fresh. That's all I'm saying. All right,
hey,
running
I don't
back
mind
injuries.
Putting on a New Era hat. I don't mind putting on the New Era hat. You know, we love them.
If you guys caught our draft streams over the summer, whenever we would draft someone in the first round, whether it be Breece Hall, ideally it was Breece Hall, but you know, whoever, Dwayne and I would each put on the team hat for the rest of the show. So good times there. Not so good times going on for one running back in Washington, though. Dwayne, Austin Ekeler already has been ruled out with a concussion, meaning it is Brian Robinson, RB1 season. How high is the ceiling here, Dwayne? Because man, I know Jeremy McNichols is going to be involved to some extent, but I think it's going to be pretty tough this week to rank at least, you know, more than 10 or 11 running backs ahead of Brian Robinson.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Brian Robinson this weekend. We've got a game with the highest game total. They're 4-point dogs, you know, so I mean, we're talking about a situation where, hey, we're probably going to have a really competitive game. It should be pretty close, a lot of points to be scored, and now we've got things consolidated down to really one running back. I'm with you. I do think McNichols is going to get some of the passing down work, but I think Brian Robinson's also going to pick up some of that. So if we look at him last week, whenever Austin Ekeler exited the game early, season high 75% snap share, season high 62% of the team's rushing attempts, and a 61% route participation. Like, there's a chance all those numbers are at 70% this weekend in a game environment that we really love. So yeah, B-Rob, I think, has an absolute chance to go off. He's a running back one this weekend. I would say, Ian, you know, right in that Aaron Jones range. I wouldn't blame anyone if they wanted to put him over Achane, probably right there in that tier. Like, we're obviously not getting him past like all the really big names that we know have loaded workloads that have already proven how many fantasy points they can score. But once you get past those names, Brian Robinson looks like one of the best plays this weekend.
Ranked consensusly between RB11 and RB14 by our team of rankers. So yeah, far more lineups than not, guys, should have Brian Robinson starting ahead of, again, what looks like the biggest shootout of the week, at least on paper. More unfortunate running back injuries. Dwain, Bijan Robinson not listed, and then all of a sudden add to the injury report with a shoulder injury on Thursday. So just, shown as limited, super helpful. All the national reporters out there just echoing the exact same practice report we got from the Falcons. Thanks for adding literally nothing to that, guys. But yeah, man, as you mentioned on the Wednesday show, Dwain, Tyler Algier, someone that should be rostered in every single league because of the handcuff upside here. So again, we're recording this on Friday morning. Hopefully Bijan is perfectly fine, practice in full today, and is even listed on the final injury report, and we can all get back to treating him as a top 3 running back, business as usual. But God forbid, Dwain, we do see Bijan leave. I mean, I think everything we just said about Brian Robinson and kind of where he ranks would also apply to Tyler Algier.
Yeah, not quite the same matchup. You're playing against the Saints, a little bit of a tougher run defense than what we're dealing with. But yes, it's an offense that we feel good about. Also, we do have a banged up offensive line for the Falcons. They could be without 2 of their starters this weekend. I haven't checked to see if they've declared either of those players out, but it was Dahlman and McGarry, I think, were the 2 guys last week during the game that got hurt. So if that's the case and they're out, that's another little bit of a downgrade. But to your point, like we've seen Algier in a full-time role before. This is an offense that's just now starting to come into its own, starting to click. We've got Zach Robinson as the new coordinator. You've got Kirk Cousins coming in. So it's good. We knew it was going to take this offense a little bit of time to gel, but I still think it's going to be one of the better ones in the league, and it could pop at any moment. And so whichever running back is back there, obviously we want it to be Bijan. That's the player we love. He's a more talented player than Tyler Algier, but Algier's already shown us in the past, Ian. Like he can come out and he can be a running back 1 if you give him that volume, which most running backs can do. But he's a guy with size, so he can run through arm tackles. He can give you yards after contact. And most importantly, he's a guy you don't have to take off the field inside the 5-yard line. He's going to give you a chance to score those touchdowns, which is the main thing we care about in fantasy football for running backs. That's how you get these huge outings. So if we don't have Bijan, I would say high-end running back 2 territory. Not quite where we've got Brian Robinson, a little bit below that, but only rostered right now in Yahoo leagues, Ian, 24% of the time. So if you're playing against the Bijan manager, and you're listening to this, and you happen to have a spot to get Tyler Algier onto your bench so that he can't have him, good move by you. If you have Bijan Robinson, I'll be thinking about getting Tyler Algier on my bench because it's not going to be a 1-for-1, but a pretty close to 1-for-1 trade-off. You getting to put Algier in. Or maybe you just need a running back. You got people that are hurt and you got a spot. Algier's a name that's going to be available most of the time. You should be picking him up.
Tyler Algier or Travis Etienne?
Algier.
Tyler Algier or Josh Jacobs?
That's about where I would put it. I think I'm going to still lean to Josh Jacobs.
If Love's back, especially.
Right, they're very similar. That's a really good one. They're similar archetype backs. I like both the offenses, slightly like the Packers more, though.
I think I would prioritize Zach Moss ahead of Algier. David Montgomery, that's a pretty close one. Maybe Algier there.
Yep, just that's about where it's at. Like Montgomery, the only reason, right, that we don't rank him higher every week, he's always a mid-range running back too, is because we know he has to split the backfield. But he keeps outproducing that. And he gets a lot of the carries inside the 5. I mean, he's outscoring Jahmyr Gibbs right now. So, I mean, look, it's hard to bench David Montgomery, but right in that range.
All right, Dwain, actually, this is good news here. We have Panthers head coach David Canales tell us that Jonathan Brooks with his knee is approaching a return. I like to think it was that, Kevin Nash kind of WWE wheelchair gif where he saw how good Andy Dalton was out there, stood up, got that cast off, and everything was good in the hood. But in all seriousness, this was somewhat expected. Again, put on IR, but even though he's expecting to miss 4 games, we were anticipating a return around week 5 or week 6. So let's say best case, Dwain, we find out that Brooks is practicing next week and he's going to be active for week 5. Probably the earliest we can use is week 6, just given the potential for them to ramp him back in the action.
Yeah, and even then, like, it may take a little bit longer, but the thing you want to remember with Brooks is really the long view here. By the end of the season, I think he will have taken over this backfield, and he is a very explosive player. Now, he's coming off the ACL, so again, we've got to have the ramp up. We probably don't get 100% of Jonathan Brooks at any point this season. However, the way he graded out in the rookie supermodel over at FantasyLife, man, it was really good. Very, very strong. This is a guy that could absolutely be a running back 1 in fantasy football. Now, we'll see what happens. Chuba Hubbard, your play of the week last week, your bold take came through. He's looked really good, over these last couple of games. But I think the biggest thing here, Ian, is that the Panthers actually looked a lot better with Andy Dalton. We've both said don't expect Andy Dalton to come out here and throw for over 300 yards every game, but at least he stabilizes the offense, because there was a brief moment where it was like, man, what's even the point with Jonathan Brooks if Bryce Young is under center? Now, the one little wrinkle here, Ian, is that if they do decide later in the year and the team's not playing well, to put Bryce Young back in, and it could completely implode the entire offense. So there's some risk with this guy, but Jonathan Brooks, a really high-end talent profile, and I do think at some point he will be the lead back for the Panthers this year. I think it probably takes once he comes back, it probably would be like another 4 weeks beyond that, based on everything I've read from the doctors. He'll get some work, but before you're really going to feel good about getting into your lineup, probably another 4 games.
Probably similar to that Breece Hall ramp up that we saw in the 2023 season.
Yeah,
out there
exactly.
Making some big plays, not exactly getting featured though. So we'll see what happens. Chuba Hubbard, in the meantime, a low end RB2 for us. I have him RB24. Dwain has him RB22. But yeah, guys, Jonathan Brooks down the stretch. And I will say, look, Bryce Young, you guys saw him this year. He was absolutely horrendous, the worst quarterback in football. He was also really bad as a rookie, and we still got plenty of usable fantasy weeks from Chuba Hubbard down the stretch, pretty much by virtue of being the team's featured workhorse running back. So hopefully that's on the table for Jonathan Brooks. As Dwain mentioned, the supermodel comps very, very good, and he is a player that we know has a skill set to handle a true every down workhorse role. Dwain, last big headline for running backs, hopefully getting back a true stud, and that is Seahawks RB1 Kenneth Walker, starting off the week with a limited practice. This is the first time he's been on the practice field since originally suffering that oblique injury in week 1. So Zach Charbonnet, had a tough couple weeks to start, but then last week, I think he forced 10 or 11 total missed tackles, looked much better in that 2-touchdown effort against the Miami Dolphins. So, with Walker, they are playing on Monday night, Dwain, so I don't think it's a situation where we can completely trust he's going to be out there, but as things stand right now, the fact he got to start the week with a limited practice, I do tentatively think Walker's going to be back out there.
Yeah, I think he's definitely trending in the right direction. The challenge is, how healthy will he be? How do the coaches now feel about him? Because this is the new coaching staff, immediately, experiencing one of these soft tissue issues that we've seen Kenneth Walker be prone to these things. Yeah. This has happened. Now we see this sometimes with these guys that are so electric on the field with the ball in their hands. Like we saw it with Kadarius Toney. I know he didn't get the ball very much, but when he did, you're like, oh my God, he made like 3 people miss in a row and then he hurt himself. It's kind of the same thing we see with this guy with Kenneth Walker. So it'll be interesting to see if Zach Charbonnet has actually earned more trust from them. And they're like, we really got 2 second-round backs. Let's just kind of rotate these 2 guys. Let's not overwork either one of them. We don't know. We really have no clue what they're going to do with the 2 guys. So it could immediately go back to what we saw. They're just like, no, Kenneth Walker's a better player. We're going to play him all the time. I will say this weekend, because it is the Monday night game, it's a little bit tricky. I'm not being over aggressive with Kenneth Walker in the ranks. I've got him projected to play, and I've got him sitting right now at running back 27. And I think that's about right. It will be a borderline running back 2. There's some risk there because it's Monday night. So that always will make me keep a player a little bit lower, just to encourage, you if you need to start some other players over him. Just go ahead and make the call and use the guy that is healthy. If we didn't have Charbonnet there, Ian, I'd feel differently about it. Like if all we had was Kenny McIntosh and then we had, Kenneth Walker, I would feel differently. But I just don't see them needing to force it in the first game back with Charbonnet playing well last weekend.
Charbonnet accordingly wouldn't be anything more than kind of a mid-tier RB3, probably 6-7 spots behind Kenneth
RB3,
Walker.
RB4. Yeah.
If Walker's out, man, I ranked them, assuming Walker will be out at the beginning of the week. I'll get that updated later today, but I had Charbonnet as the RB13, despite it being a tough matchup because, hey, we have seen him, make some goodness happen in the receiving game. It is a tough matchup, though, against Aiden Hutchinson and company. This has been one of the most severe pass funnel defenses. I say right there with the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, this season, the Lions have allowed the fewest fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, but they're 20th and 31st against quarterbacks and wide receivers, respectively. So please, Seahawks O-line, hold up for a little bit for Geno. And I think we can see some fireworks on Monday night and a matchup that's given us plenty of those over the past few years. Lions, Seahawks, man, really good games here recently. All right, guys, a few more running back injuries to get through before we move on to wide receivers. There are a couple situations to keep monitoring. Alvin Kamara did return to practice on Thursday, but was still limited. Tend to think he's going to play through that hip and rib injury, but again, just keep an eye on that. Jamal Williams, next man up if not. Also, Browns running back Jerome Ford returned to practice on Thursday dealing with that knee injury. Pierre Strong Jr. remains out. So Ford, someone that we've seen had workhorse roles in weeks 1 and week 3, did have a lot more Deontay Foreman in week 2. Again, we'll see how things shape up in week 4 on maybe the single worst offense in all of football. Also, Dolphins running back Raheem Mostert got to start off the week with a limited practice. Monday night game, though, so if you are going to trust him, make sure you do have a backup plan there. Guys not practicing, Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce for the Texans. Unfortunate on Pierce because we did get reports that he was reportedly close to returning, but alas, Dwain, I mean, if we do have Cam Akers back in that RB1 role, I'm not putting him up there with Brian Robinson. I wouldn't even put him up there with Tyler Algier, but once we get down to that lower end RB2 conversation with guys, I don't know, like a Chuba Hubbard, like a J.K. Dobbins, I think that's a better spot for Cam Akers.
Yeah, so the one problem with Akers is if you get into a bad game script, we've seen they're not going to give him the passing down role. And that happened to him last week. You end up in a blowout loss to the Vikings. That's really what limited him. But he got the majority of the rushing attempts. So when the Texans get to have their way, which typically they're going to, guys, they're still going to be a really good offense. They're a little banged up. We're going to talk about their wide receivers here in a minute. But as long as they can play in a typical Texans game script, Cam Akers is going to be fine. I mean, when you look at this matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars, we've got a 26.3 team total. That's absolutely one of the best on the slate. So there's going to be some opportunities to score some touchdowns here. And I would feel really good about Cam Akers as that, what you mentioned, low-end running back too. But if the Texans are leading that whole game, Cam Akers is going to perform like a running back 1 this weekend. So there is a bigger range on him, though, because Zach Charbonnet, he plays on passing downs. We don't have to worry about it, right? Brian Robinson, going to get plenty of the passing down work. We know McNichols will get a little bit, but there's more risk with Akers because they use Agumbawale on all the third down stuff, 2-minute offense. That all goes to a different running back.
Final 3 notes. Steelers running back Jaylen Warren with the knee injury, expecting to miss at least this week and considered week to week overall. So good news for Najee Harris and that's right, Cordero Patterson. Najee is perfectly fine. Didn't even have that arm injury that had him in a sling earlier this week, listed on the injury report. Sadly, though, we cannot have good things, everyone. Bucs running back Bucky Irving downgraded to a DNP on Thursday with a hamstring injury. Told reporters that he is going to play, but as we've seen, not always, indicative of if they actually do play later in the week. So at a minimum, guys, tiebreakers with Bucky Irving. I know you were very excited to pick him up this week off the waiver wire. Got some sad messages from Dwain about this very topic last night, but cannot be fully trusting him ahead of this Sunday. And finally, Ian Rappaport said that Christian McCaffrey with his Achilles tendonitis, quote unquote, more of a matter of weeks before return. Had a couple of reports going on about what exactly went down in his trip to Germany. So sounds like tentatively we could be getting CMC back before too long, but again, certainly still seems like an evolving situation. So that was the main running back headlines, guys. And before we get to wide receivers, a quick word from our friends over at Experian. Experian is to your finances what FantasyLife is to your fantasy league. It is a tool and resource designed to make your life easier. And accordingly, the Experian app is free to download and serves as a one-stop shop for managing your financial health. With so many spending and subscription details to track, let Experian handle it for you. They'll help you find and cancel your unwanted or forgotten subscriptions, helping you save money and focus on what really matters, winning your fantasy league. Download the Experian app today. Just note that results will vary. Not all subs are eligible. Savings not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account is required, and you can see Experian.com for details. Wide receivers, Dwain, lordy, we have quite a few injuries to get to here. And with that, let's get to them. Eagles wide receiver 1, A.J. Brown with the hamstring, and wide receiver 2, Devonta Smith with a concussion, not practicing all week and presumably will be missing this weekend's NFC wildcard rematch against the Buccaneers. So Jahan Dotson has already been out there. Britton Covey's on IR with a shoulder issue, so he's out of the picture as well. So it seems like, Dwain, we're going to have Jahan Dotson, Paris Campbell, and rookie Johnny Wilson and 3 wide receiver sets. Do you care, or is this just going to be the Dallas Goedert and give Saquon as many carries as he can handle game? That's what it's going to be.
Look, one of these guys could end up coming through. The problem is they're all very risky plays. And I'm not playing Jahan Dotson, even if there's a fire, even if my whole street's on fire. Like, I don't even have another house to run to. Like, I'm not starting him because the guy's never been able to earn targets. He had his chance in Washington. He had his chance last week, with both these guys out of the game at the end. And I mean, Jahan Dotson, like, I don't know what happened. I know at one point we thought he might be good, but there's something. I don't think it's an athletic thing. When you watch John Dotson, it's good, but there's something where quarterbacks don't trust him. He must not be in the right spot. I can't tell you what it is, but quarterbacks don't want to throw the man the football. So I don't expect that to suddenly change just because some other guys are missing from the offense. Johnny Wilson's the most intriguing one to me, Ian. But again, I don't have the stones to tell you to go out and play him. So yeah, I think it's just an avoid all those guys. Start Dallas Goedert. If you got him, you're going to feel great about it. I mean, honestly, Ian, I know we're not to tight ends yet, but Dallas Goedert, if those two guys are out, top 3 tight end this weekend, especially with the state of the tight end.
I was just about to say, I mean, I ranked him tight end 5. You ranked him tight end 4 to start the week, but looking at him more, that's with Trey McBride considered in, which we'll talk about that. If McBride and Laporta are out, Goddard's for sure a top 3 tight end. The only guys, Dwayne, Brock Bowers, Travis Kelce, that's it.
Yeah, and I think you can make an argument that's the tier that he would be in their tier. Yeah, I'm with you. Jalen, it hurts Jalen a little bit too, guys. This does hurt the upside. There's not much of a ceiling now for the passing game. You're not going to suddenly, look up and be like, oh, Jalen had a 300-yard passing game. And those are the games where he goes bonkers. He's still going to save you because of what he does on the ground. That's the beauty of his profile, is you're still probably you'll scratch out 15 points no matter what with Jalen Hurts. And you still might get your 20 that you're used to, but you're not getting 30.
I'll say this, Dwayne. I miss the days of Jalen Hurts giving us 30, 40 rushing yards per game. I'm looking at it now and, kind of ruining my argument. He is at 47 rushing yards per game right now.
I was about to say,
this dude lost his top speed, though. He cannot freaking even beat defensive ends to the corner half the time. That's all. So Tush Push is great and everything. But, man, what happened to the dynamic Jalen Hurts we saw back in 21 and 22, Dwayne? That's all I'm saying.
I don't know. Maybe injuries. It doesn't feel like it would be age yet, but this stuff happens pretty quickly. Some of it could just be some variant stuff. I did notice some of the same things you're talking about. But overall, I'm not going to overreact. The yardage is still there. He's not going to break a 50-yarder or anything, but I think he still knows when to run and he can scramble and do what he needs to do.
Really surprised he's up at 47 this year. That's on me. We will continue to watch the film and get better. Some more injuries that suck, Dwayne. Texans wide receiver Nico Collins wasn't listed on the injury report. Then we got that pesky midweek downgrade with a hamstring injury. He was limited on Thursday. Also have wide receiver Tank Dell dealing with a quote-unquote painful ribs injury. He has not practiced all week and is not expected to play Sunday per beat reporter Aaron Wilson. So Stephon Diggs to the moon, Dwayne. I think that's something we can all agree on. We obviously want Nico to be out there. Hopefully this was just a minor maintenance thing. He has been banged up with some other injuries over these past few weeks. Didn't wind up making a difference in his playing time or performance. But if we do see Nico and Tank Dell out, Dwayne, John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson, Robert Woods, how do you see the wide receiver pecking order breaking out? And then I guess the other question would be, how high do we boost Dalton Schultz up in the ranks? Because we did see last year when some of these wide receivers missed time, that is really when CJ Stroud starts going to his tight end more often.
Really all about Stephon Diggs as well as Dalton Schultz here. I mean, those are going to be the two main guys. So I would say Stephon Diggs is a wide receiver 1 if those two players are out. If either one of those players, being Tank Dell or Nico Collins, are out, and it does sound like Dell will miss, then he's already a high-end wide receiver 2. We talked about that yesterday. So, Stephon Diggs really needs to be in almost all starting lineups. You can almost assume period right now at this point, because at least one of those guys is probably missing, maybe both. Dalton Schultz, that's going to move him into potentially as high as the mid-range tight end 1 conversation with how bad the tight end situation has been. Yeah. And Dalton Schultz is actually free in some of these fantasy, out. I'm going to check him right now on Yahoo while we're live here.
I saw him just anecdotally. That's a tough word, but yeah, I saw him on a couple of waiver wires. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I thought of it, because I saw him on a couple of waiver wires, and we play in some sick leagues where no one should be available. So Dalton Schultz right now rostered 67% of the time. So most of the time he's gone, but like 30% of the time, like, he's out there. So he's a player that you could absolutely pick up. You could plug in, producer swing. If you're listening, go check your waiver wire right now. I know we were talking about Zach Ertz and Tyler Conklin before the game, but if you can have Dalton Schultz, that would be an upgrade over both of those players. If I were to have to pick one of the other guys, Ian, I do think it would be Hutchinson. Like, I'm not super confident in it, but he's a guy that they've tried to get on the field, right? A little bit, even though they have these other 3 players. And so anytime you see something like that, you're like, okay, the coaches think enough of him. Now, his route participation for the season's 11%. And Robert Woods is right around the same thing, but Robert Woods he's washed. We've already seen it. We saw it last year. He got playing time early in the year with Stroud, and it didn't matter. He didn't get the targets. Hutchinson's the name that, like, okay, maybe he could do a Noah Brown because we did see Noah Brown come through with some really big games last year, and we didn't expect that. So give me the young player that might be able to come through with a big play at this point and not need all that volume to make it happen. But again, that would only be in really severe situations where you're playing in these really large leagues that start 3 wide receivers, 2 flex, and you've got an injury on top of that. That's maybe when Xavier Hutchinson could get into a lineup.
I don't dislike Hutchinson. I know, Dwayne, he's someone where usually every year before the draft, I kind of do this 5-tool wide receiver study, seeing guys who check boxes above average height, weight, speed, route running, and playmaking ability. Help tip us off on guys like Nico Collins and Romeo Doubs a bit before maybe the masses caught up to us. And Xavier Hutchinson checked a lot of those boxes too. I like him, but just from watching the Texans games, man, it does seem a bit more gadgety. Why can't John Mechie actually go ahead and step up a bit? Because this is someone that was getting a lot of hype throughout camp, had a nice preseason, allegedly had a lot of trade interest. But John Mechie, maybe for DFS, purposes, Dwayne?
Maybe. I mean, but they haven't wanted to get him out there. Why not? If he's so great, why is he not playing? Why can he not play over Robert Woods? But Hutchinson's got a 21% targets per route run this year. Very small sample, guys. He's not running a lot of routes, but that's a decent number. That's wide receiver 3 worthy. So Hutchinson would be my name. Maybe it'll end up being Mechie, but man, I don't trust that.
Certainly wouldn't trust enough to start in the majority of leagues. But, Dwayne, hopefully we can start this next guy in the majority of leagues. Panthers wide receiver Deontay Johnson. Just when we think we're, fully moving forward as a wide receiver 1, he suffers a midweek groin injury, goes from not listed to a DNP on Thursday. Now, he did say that he'll play, and the team expects him back tomorrow. And just, again, Dwayne, over the years, we've kind of seen this with Deontay having some annoying soft tissue injuries that he does ultimately wind up playing through. So with Adam Thielen currently on IR with the hamstring, I'm hopeful that Deontay doesn't even have a questionable tag and we can just move forward like this never happened. But God forbid it is a bit more serious than they're letting on, Dwayne. Nice little bumps potentially for Xavier Legette and also Jonathan Mingo ahead of a Panthers, Bengals game that we're expecting to actually score quite a few points.
Yeah, it's going to hurt my coin if Deontay Johnson has a bad groin. Like, that's the only way I can say that word right, is to think of the word coin. So, yeah, well, that was a terrible dad joke on a Friday morning. But anyway, yeah, Deontay Johnson, you mentioned it. He plays through this stuff. Now, it's going to impact. It can impact performance. So he had a 38% target share. Probably want to tone down your expectations a little bit versus what we saw. Why can't we just have nice things? We got to get a Deontay Johnson breakout, and then we immediately have to have him, on the injury report this week. I think you're still looking at him in the wide receiver 3 range, Ian, but you kind of have to temper your expectations a little bit here about the upside. Maybe he ends up being fine and this is all nothing, but he is a guy that, to your point, he's been injured quite often through his career. So anytime I see something like this pop up, it's like, okay, like we're going to have to deal with this again. But the challenge here is like, who else to move up? So Xavier Legette and Jonathan Mingo are already moving into larger roles because we've got Adam Thielen, on the IR. Yeah. Mingo was the guy last week after Adam Thielen left the game that took over more of the passing, over more of the routes. Xavier Legette also got a small bump up. But if for some reason Deontay Johnson were to, not play or not be able to play a full complement of snaps, it's obviously an upgrade for both of these guys, Ian. But I think that the best you can do right now is like boom bust wide receiver 5. So again, still really risky plays because neither one of them have shown us that they can earn targets at the NFL level, at a consistent rate. Yeah. And you and I both know routes are great. We want you on the field, but at wide receiver, unlike running back, the next thing is you've actually got to be good enough to earn the opportunity. You don't just get it handed to you and then 10 other people do your job, not for you, but, do a lot of your job for you where they're blocking 9. Because let's face it, the quarterback's, running the other way most of the time. But with the wide receivers, we'll see what happens. Definitely something to keep an eye on. I think they're guys that in deeper leagues you want to have on your roster just in case they pop off this weekend, especially Legette. We saw Mingo for a season last year. I don't think there's much there. Maybe he can change our minds, but Legette is a guy that if you're playing in a deeper league, I like to have him stashed.
Only thing I would add is that, again, if you are in some sicko leagues like Dwayne and I, where Conklin's not on the waiver wire, Zach Ertz isn't on the waiver wire, Tommy Tremble, full-time role last week. And again, with some of these injuries, with Andy Dalton doing his thing, I don't want to say you could technically do worse. We're not feeling great about Tommy Tremble. Don't get me wrong. But hey, at this point, you just want someone that's going to be out there. And Tremble, again, moderate upgrade with all these injuries going
Just say
down.
His name right, Ian. Come on.
Tommy Trembles.
Tommy Trembles.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, it's Tommy Trembles.
It's my boy, Tommy Trembos. Give me some Capicola. All right, 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel back on the practice field. Dwain, a bit of a surprise here. Still dealing with that calf injury. DNP on Wednesday, limited on Thursday. So what concerns me, though, with this one, Dwain, is I'm brought back to last season. He got injured against the Giants on Thursday night. Ended up playing the next week, but it was almost clear that he was in a reserve role despite having his usual snap rate. Didn't get a target the entire game and only had 3 rush attempts out there. So with Deebo, if he is active, Dwain, are you comfortable putting him back into his usual, spot as an upside wide receiver too?
Yeah, I'm not going to rank him that high, but if you have him, it's going to be hard to keep him on your fantasy bench. That's the challenge, right? That's ultimately the only thing people are going to care about. So you're going to have to temper your expectations, but unless you're really loaded, you're going to have to put Deebo out there. We've got a situation where Jordan Mason's out here having to handle 80% of the rushing attempts. So I could see the 49ers pushing him back a little bit early because they need some help in the ground game, not just, the receiving room. We'll see I know we'll talk about George Kittle here in just a minute, but he's still Deebo Samuel. I agree with you. It could totally be in more of a decoy role, but it's just so hard to not have him in your lineup unless you're just stacked. So I'm going to say wide receiver 3 range is where we'll have him if he's going to be playing.
Deebo or Khalil Shakir?
God, old man, right out of the gate. I think I would go Khalil Shakir because I just like the matchup with the Ravens. You've mentioned the funnel. It's got a chance for a shootout. I would go ahead and roll the dice on Khalil Shakir there.
Deebo or Christian Kirk? I think that's where we go, Deebo.
Man, we know Christian Kirk's going to eventually do his thing, but Jesus, man, the Jaguars, good God.
I know. Would have been a lot cooler if we didn't let that potential touchdown hit him right between the eyes last week, but such is life. All right, guys, those were the major wide receiver headlines. Just a few other notes on the position, though. Jamar Chase started off the week with a limited practice in that shoulder injury, but was back and practicing full on Thursday, fully expecting him to do his thing once again this Sunday against the Panthers. Also, we did have a couple more mid-week downgrades. Devonta Adams, also with a hamstring injury, limited on Thursday. Absolute yuck there. And Roma Dunze with a hip issue, not listed and then limited on Thursday as well. So keep an eye on those. Good news, though, for Bears fans is that Keenan Allen is back out there on the practice field back-to-back days with that heel injury, seemingly on track to return to the action after missing the last 2 weeks. Marvin Harrison Jr., Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jaden Reed, Jordan Addison, and Gabe Davis all tentatively expected to play, but they have not gone up to a full practice just yet. At least with Addison, we did hear from the coaching staff that he is, on track to suit up this Sunday against the Packers. So again, more good than not there. Only thing I would add with Jaden Reed is last week he was limited, but that was just with a calf issue. This week they've also added the quad designation. So he's out there, especially with Jordan Love. We're still feeling good. But again, if we do get a questionable tag, it's just not quite as clear as it might have been a couple of weeks ago. And finally, Cooper Kupp once again ruled out with that ankle injury, but got the cast off. So hopefully that return is near as well. So those were the big wide receiver headlines, guys. Before we get to tight ends, a quick word to our friends over at DraftKings. A chill in the air, leaves falling to the ground, and football every weekend. That is what fall is all about. And you can make each weekend even more exciting by getting into the action with our partners at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. And right now, all new customers who bet $5 will instantly get $200 in bonus bets. All you got to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using our promo code FantasyLife. The crown is yours. Again, that is $200 in bonus bets instantly, and you can stay in on the action and use your $200 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. After all, DraftKings is the place to bet touchdowns. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use our promo code FantasyLife and bet just $5 on any wager to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FantasyLife only at DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, Dwain, we've talked about some big injuries, and now we got 2 even bigger ones, man. It's week 4. Come on, injury gods. Give us a freaking break already, because Cardinals tight end 1, fantasy tight end 1, Trey McBride, looking very unlikely to suit up this week after missing back-to-back practices with a concussion. So my guess would be replacing him, Dwain, probably a bit of a committee approach between rookie Tip Raymond and also Elijah Higgins, who had that cool touchdown from Kyler a couple weeks ago. Look, can't feel good about starting any of them. Honestly, can't feel great about starting any of these other wide receivers other than Marvin Harrison Jr., who might go for 400 yards this Sunday against the Washington Commanders. So overall thoughts on, again, what to maybe do if you don't have Trey McBride, because I don't think there's a one-for-one replacement we can get from the Cardinals and feel particularly good about. But again, there are some names out there on the waiver wire who at least can be out there on the field for us.
Dalton Schultz, if he's there, that would be number one. He's available in 30% of leagues. Then you're talking Zach Ertz and Tyler Conklin, both on the field all the time. We've got a matchup this weekend with the Broncos for the Jets. We're going to see the clamps put on Garrett Wilson, potentially, right, by Surtain. Garrett Wilson's still good enough to win that matchup, guys, but it's going to be tough. You're going to be facing a really good corner. We saw last week that the Buccaneers decided to attack the interior of that defense. We saw Cade Otton go off for a 24% target share. He didn't do much with it, but he got the target, so that would be good for Tyler Conklin. And then Chris Godwin was working on the inside. He was the other guy to lead the team. So I do think that Tyler Conklin's an option, 90% route participation, and then Zach Ertz in a potentially high-scoring game, against the Arizona Cardinals. Those would be my options.
Zach Ertz revenge game factor. Got to consider all the variables going on here. So I am with you again as those being the top factors, Dwayne. Cole Kmet, someone that I know is really at the top of a lot of waiver wire issues. I mean, he did get a nice bump in utilization. Yeah, but we also don't expect Caleb to be throwing, 60 passes a week.
And we got to, I'm checking Cole Kmet right now. Rostered 74% of the time now. So, I mean, he's available in some leagues. We really need Keenan Allen off the field, though. Keenan is back to practice. If Keenan is back out there, a lot of those targets that we saw go to, Cole Kmet underneath intermediate range on the inside of the hash marks. He catches stuff in the flats and stuff too. But a lot of those targets, those quicker things, or the second read, when your outside wide receivers got, help coverage, a lot of that's going to go to Keenan now instead of Cole Kmet.
Only other two names I throw in there that are a bit desperate, but hey, Bretton Strange with Evan Ingram continuing to be out is playing a near every down role. And Mike Gesicki, Dwayne, has outscored Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce combined through 3 weeks of action. At least has a good matchup, even if he's not on the field quite as often as we would desire. So the other big tight end injury to get to, though, guys, Sam Laporta has not practiced all week with an ankle injury. Now, Dan Campbell called him day-to-day earlier in the week, and man, this is one tough cookie. We did see Sam Laporta last year play through that painful injury immediately the week after throughout the playoffs and look good doing so. So hopefully he's out there, Dwayne. Now, it's not the playoffs. Maybe they do take a bit more caution here. But if Laporta is going to be out of the picture, Brock Wright, every down roll against the Seahawks defense that has been playing great, but to your previous point, when they faced, Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, and Skylar Thompson, tough to take all of their, advanced metrics at face value.
Yeah, don't do this to yourself. This guy's real name is Block Right because he mostly blocks, okay? He's not Brock Right, he's Block Right. So on fire, with the dad jokes today, I would be totally embarrassing my kids if they heard this. So, they don't listen to it, so thank God for me. But yeah, looking at the rest of the offense, it's just going to be Jameson Williams, man. Jameson Williams has already proven himself, so now we're just going to have more targets funneling over to him. Those underneath little quick, passes, if the defense is playing off coverage, those probably go to Jahmyr Gibbs, not Mr. Block Right.
Block Right. Maybe your finest work, Dwayne. Good job by you this lovely Friday AM. Other final notes at the tight end position. Practicing in full and all good. Dalton Schultz, Taysom Hill back from that chest injury, and also Packers tight end Tucker Kraft, who was listed as limited last week. So Luke Musgrave has been limited with a quad injury. I don't think he's going to miss it, but just keep in mind, guys, God forbid we ever do see one of Tucker Kraft or Luke Musgrave miss some action. That other guy's going to be shooting up the fantasy ranks in a hurry. Also, George Kittle back-to-back limited practices, still dealing with a hamstring injury, says he is quote unquote very excited to play football and feeling fantastic. So fingers crossed we do get Kittle back in action for that depleted 49ers offense. Hunter Henry limited, but no reason to overly believe he's going to be missing action. And then we have Evan Ingram and David Njoku still not practicing. Njoku might have gotten back out there. Do you see that, Dwayne?
Yeah, and Njoku was a limited.
Okay, he was DNP then limited. So we'll see what happens there. Such a train wreck in Cleveland. I mean, if they can just fix the O-line, get Watson playing better, start getting more separation, and maybe get the run game going, they'll be fine, Dwayne. But again, few things going on there. So some more just offensive line injuries. Browns are banged up. So many of these, man. Patriots have 2 starters. Chargers offensive tackles. Dolphins, Teron Armstead. Lions have Dan Skipper and Frank Ragnow. Lane Johnson for the Eagles, also in the concussion protocol. And as Dwayne mentioned earlier, Falcons also potentially missing a couple guys. And even on defense, Titans defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons out with an elbow right now. Could be a nice little bump up for Devon Achane. Also, Raiders DM Max Crosby not practicing. I know that Raiders defense has a nice schedule, but man, rough run out for them so far. And Joey Bosa, in addition to Derwin James, could be sidelined for that matchup against the Chiefs. So that was the injury report. But now, guys, let's get into some bold predictions because, Dwain, lo and behold, your boys have been doing pretty good this year. 8 for 12 on the season. Last week, Dwain, you had Brandon Ayuk going for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. He did not get there, just 48 yards. But when Jawan Jennings had 175 yards and 3 touchdowns, I think we can all see, what Dwain was thinking. He did hit Zach Moss reaching 20 fantasy points. He ended up having 20.7. I hit both of mine. Chuba Hubbard, 100 plus yards and a touchdown. He had 169 yards and a touchdown. Also said Jacoby Myers was going to have a big day, and he finished up with 21.2 PPR points. So let's stay hot, Dwain, and let's stay hot maybe with a certain Commander's RB1.
Yeah, we've got Brian Robinson, in a larger role and a game that we love. I'm not going to rehash everything we said earlier, but I'm going to say 115 yards, Ian, and 2 touchdowns. So I think you're going to be in really good shape with Brian Robinson Jr. against the Cardinals this weekend.
Obviously starting them everywhere, but I like that 100 plus yards and maybe 1 or 2 touchdowns parlay over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Sounds like a great day to be great to me. I'm going with T. Higgins, Dwain. 7 catches, 119 yards, and not 1, but 2 receiving scores. I know he had the 39-yard dud last week, but the usage was fine, and he had not 1, but 2 deeper catches, one of which was in the end zone where only got 1 foot down. It was close. That's all I'm trying to say. So we saw Jamar Chase get back on track last week. Another winnable matchup in a good shootout environment against the Panthers this week. I love the chances for T. Higgins to boom in a major way. Again, 119 and 2 scores. Dwain, you have another wide receiver you want to go to. Someone who's played incredible this year, just hasn't, unfortunately, had a starting quarterback on the field for 2 of the 3 games.
Yeah, so that's the caveat here. And I'm actually I'm going to switch my name here, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about the guy that you just mentioned. It is Jaden Reed. Okay, we've got Jordan Love. That's the main key. If Jordan Love's out there, we're doing this. We've got the Vikings giving up 271 yards per game to opposing pass catchers. Now, against wide receivers, they've actually not been that bad. They've actually played against some really good teams. So that's where we have this tool over at FantasyLife. Ian, folks need to go check out. It's called the Defense Versus Position, or DVP tool. It's in our tools and stats area, but it'll tell you basically how much has a defense given up to a unit over their average. Meaning, so if wide receivers for all the teams that the Vikings have played average 100 yards per game, and then we see that they've actually given up 90, well, that would be minus 10 versus the position. So it actually shows you that they've actually been good versus the teams that they've played. So the reason I'm switching this is because Stephon Diggs is playing the number 1 matchup in the NFL this weekend in DVP with the Jacksonville Jaguars, Ian, giving up 55 yards to opposing wide receivers over their average, okay, to the position group for the teams they've played. We've got this condensing down, probably no Tank Dell. Give me Stephon Diggs going off for 125, Ian, and 2 touchdowns.
Okay, Dwain, I'll give you the bold call there because that was a big stat line. So Stephon Diggs and also, again, Brian Robinson from Dwain. I got T. Higgins. And yes, Justin Fields, 300, maybe not passing yards, but total yards, and not 1, not 2, but 3 total touchdowns there. Colts defense, not afraid of them. Allowed the 2nd most total yards this season. Again, feeling really good. This is finally the week that Justin Fields gives us that familiar fantasy boom. He has been playing, again, I think a bit better than those box scores have indicated thus far. So yeah, guys, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Life Show. We thank you for tuning in as always, and just want to say from the bottom of our hearts, good freaking luck this week. Go get those fantasy squads to 4-0, 1-3, whatever you need to do to go out there and get one step closer to capturing those championships. So for Dwain, for producer Kelsey, for producer Matt, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.